I can.
Hello, everybody. It's Friday once again, and we are live as I promised. So I am going to ask you. Hello, everybody. It's Friday once again, and I think I'm getting an echo from you. Well, okay, I'll do this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you can hear me. Leave me a comment. Am I getting any comments, Bwalya? Just give me a thumbs up if I'm getting any comments. Okay, so today we have been able to finally find the right stream to enable us to have better sound, better image, and be able to focus on the message and not be distracted by what's going on around us. So if you all remember, as promised, we are going to be looking. Oh, thank you, Benita. Thank you so much. So today we have our extraordinary guest, Dr. Bwalya Lungu, my dear beloved friend, based in Sacramento at the University UC Davis. This lady, you all have known her for a while. And we first met at church. That's when we were introduced. And it's funny because we are always running in the same circle, but we didn't really know each other until we met at church. And we call each other spiritual twins because we went through classes together, learned a lot of spiritual things together. And just grew spiritually together. And that's why you see us, we can go at each other on a given topic and then just be good, because for us it's not a matter of what our opinions are about minute things in life, but rather more important for us that we have a relationship that extends beyond our limited minds, but rather that exalts God at the end of the day. And speaking of which, you see that we have we have we have a better way of communicating today, and that's all thanks to our extraordinary guest, Dr. Bwalya. She went out there to look for a better tool that I could use for these streamings. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that keeps on joining and the ones that are giving me feedback. I've gotten feedback from people that have been telling me that they watch this live and they follow this live show, and it really have kept them going and kept them motivated. And so I really appreciate getting those feedback. And like I always say, if you have any topic that you are interested in, don't feel shy to let me know and we can move from there. But I honestly felt like we get so much opinions and articles and everything that we lay our hands on, just because as human beings, we need answers to what is going on around us, and we need to have an understanding of what is going on around us. So that's why I felt that it was time for us to bring in a professional to come and talk to us about what's really going on, what are the scientists seeing out there. And as I have already introduced to you my guest, I'm going to bring her in so she can do herself justice. I don't think I do her enough justice, but I'm going to bring her in so she can do herself justice. Dr. Lungu. Welcome to Mrs. LJT Show. And um, we are honored that you agreed to come on and be with us today, this Friday afternoon. Can you introduce yourself to everybody, please?
Oh my God, hello, hello, hello. And thank you so much for inviting me to come onto your show. I've been watching here and there. I think I only missed last part of last week's. And so I'm excited to be back and of course honored that I'm back as a guest. As some of you already heard, my name is Dr. Bwalya Lungu. I was trained at the University of Botswana, actually. I am a microbiologist by training. And so I guess that's one of the reasons Mrs. LJT brought me on her show today. I then did my master's and my PhD at the University of Arkansas. I'm a proud Razorback. And then from there onwards, I moved into the industry. And then now I'm a professor at the University of California at Davis. And so I deal in the safety aspects of food and still microbiology. And so, yeah, I'm here. So let's talk.
Once a microbiologist, always a microbiologist, right?
That's right. That's right. I was once asked a question. I actually went for a job interview. And at the time, I was working with one specific organism mainly. And so the interviewer said to me, she said to me, "Are you married to Listeria monocytogenes?" And I said, "No, I'm a microbiologist. I can work with everything." So yes, once a microbiologist, always a microbiologist.
Awesome, awesome. So, Dr. Lungu, the reason we brought you in today is we need to talk about this pandemic that is going on. We have theories going out there that this is being caused by 5G, which, as a technologist, I mean, I'm flawed, but it is what it is, because if I say no as a technologist, everybody will just think I'm just saying no because it's my bread and butter. So I want to take my biasness out of the picture, and I want you to talk to us. What is a coronavirus?
All right, so coronavirus is a virus. So first of all, there's different types of microorganisms. These are very small little organisms that you cannot see with your naked eye, obviously. So we've got bacteria, we've got viruses, and we've got funguses, and so on and so forth. So your coronavirus is a virus, and it belongs to a virus family called the coronavirus family. So that's the COVID-19. I take that back. The COVID-19 belongs to the coronavirus family. So within the virus kingdom, there's lots of different types of virus families, and the coronavirus is one of them. The influenza virus family is another virus family, and so on and so forth. So COVID-19 belongs to the coronavirus family. It is not the flu, as some people have been saying. They belong to two completely different families. And so the coronavirus has its own characteristics, as we are learning right now. In fact, the common cold, is a type of coronavirus. And so COVID-19 belongs to that same family, except it's having much more devastating effects on us as compared to your common cold.
So what's making it? Do scientists know why it is having such a devastating effect as compared to the common cold?
So when we look at viruses within any virus family, every single virus has its own characteristics. So if you look at what's going on right now, the coronavirus, COVID-19, all the different strains around the world have been sequenced, and they're continuously being sequenced. And within that family, other viruses have been sequenced as well. So with each virus, it has its own set of genes, and each set of genes is programmed to invade a body a certain way, or it's programmed to last in the environment in a certain way. And so the coronavirus, the COVID-19, I'm going to specifically go with that one, has its own genes, its own characteristics. and its own ways. So we still don't know everything about the coronavirus. We are daily finding out information, and I think this is what's confusing to a lot of people. A long time ago, we didn't have information at our disposal like we do now. And so it will be a while before you get to hear information about a specific virus. And by then, scientists would have had time to gather all the information they need in terms of the characteristics of the virus, how it survives, and it's which environments is it found in, and all of that. But now, because information is at our disposal, that information comes out today. A paper comes out, we all can get to read it. Tomorrow, another one comes out, and as you know, this scientist group can find something out under their conditions. Another group may find something different under their conditions. So we have to find ways to reconcile information, and we don't have time to do that because people have already grabbed it and seen it and started running with it. So I think that
people like us that don't once we see it, that's it. We don't
exactly.
Another scientist might be finding something out there that is contrary to what we just read.
But also it's called incomplete information. So when I'm running a test in my lab, for instance, I would run the test under specific conditions that will give a certain type of information. That depends what question I was asking, right? Another scientist will ask maybe different set of questions or same set of questions, but the conditions might vary. And so it's when you start putting information together and doing an assessment and analysis of what's going on, then you can come to certain conclusions, because you don't want to come to conclusion based on just one paper.
That's interesting. So, Doctor, you talked about, and by the way, this is the only time I'm going to call you Doctor during this show.
I know that.
I thought we might just as well get it out of the way, so you don't expect to be called Doctor after this show.
I'm shocked myself.
I hope Maria is not watching, because I will lose my cool points with her. But so you mentioned the sequencing and the programming of these microorganisms. So can you explain to me, because I don't want people to think that scientists are the ones that are producing these organisms. And there is, but also on that note, we do know that some of these organisms can be manufactured in labs, right? So how does all that, like when you talk about the sequencing and the programming, what does that exactly mean?
All right, so basically, if you look at every single organism, we have what we call DNA. Okay, and now with viruses, we have DNA viruses. That's deoxyribonucleic acid, and that basically is it's the foundation of life. And then viruses have RNA, so you have DNA viruses and RNA viruses. Okay, so they are different in the sense that one is based off of its ribonucleic acid, the other one makes DNA, and so on and so forth. So what then happens is, what we do when we go into the lab is we take a sample, for instance, where we think the virus is, and we extract that nucleic acid, or we take it out. So when we are doing sequencing, we're not creating a new virus. We're not trying to make a new organism. We extract, or we take out that DNA, and then we go ahead and sequence that. So what we're doing is we're looking at the nucleic acid sequence. What does this look like? And each nucleic acid sequence or amino acid sequence, there's amino acid sequences in there. They will form genes on that chain. And then what then happens is each gene is going to have a phenotypic, and when we say phenotype, I'm trying so hard not to get into the extreme science of it. But for example, I'm trying to make it just simplistic so we can all get on with it. But
you're doing well.
Yes, so the phenotype is what you're actually seeing, right? What the organism can actually do. Can this organism invade? How does this organism invade the cells of a person? There is a gene that is responsible for invading the cells. Okay, and so what happens is we are extracting so that we can determine what the genes are that are present in that virus, and then we can take a look and say, okay, this is the gene that is involved with invasion, for instance. So if you are now looking at creating vaccines or creating or trying to manufacture drugs for cures, then you're going to start targeting some of these genes. And so that's partly it. Part of the reason we're also sequencing is we want to be able to test and ensure that we can detect this organism in our bodies, in the environment, and so on and so forth. So what we then do is, now that we know the sequence, we can then create testing kits for these organisms. I cannot hear you, you're muted.
Speaking of testing kits, that I have noticed a rise in the cases of my personal friends, like people that are close to me, telling me that they're experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, but their tests are coming back negative. And then yesterday, I just happened to come across a live video of somebody who was talking about having the same thing, experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, but her test had come back negative 3 times. And now they think it's a new mutated coronavirus. So the COVID-19 has mutated. Does that now mean it will no longer be known as COVID-19? It will be known as something else, or is it still COVID-19?
No, so basically COVID-19 has several different strains. And these strains are different in the sense that the nucleic acid sequence I was talking to you about, some of that, the sequences in there may differ. So you're not going to get the same exact strain in the United States as you're getting, say, in Botswana, right? But it's still COVID-19, but the mutations may be different. So let me go back a bit and talk about mutations. So when we look at viruses, viruses are known to do recombinations and all that, because what the virus does is it enters your body and then it hijacks your cell machinery system and starts making copies of itself. So as it's making copies of itself, what happens is there can be errors. It's not foolproof, and the virus doesn't have tools to say, and maybe some may, but for the most part, viruses don't carry tools to say, okay, that's a mistake right there, so let's go back and change it and make it and correct it. Right? So there's going to be some nucleic acid error that's going to occur in there. And so what then happens is the strain, the COVID-19 strain in the US, then can differ from the COVID-19 strain in South Africa, can differ from the strain that's in China, for instance. And so now what we do, so now when you also look at mutations, you have to understand the several types of mutations. Some of them are single nucleotide mutations, meaning maybe it was just one nucleotide that was changed or just a couple of nucleotides that were changed. And that change might have no effect. You might find that it's a silent mutation. You really don't see the phenotype. You're not seeing what the effect of what that mutation was. And in some cases, yeah, the difference, you can see a change maybe in the amino acids that are produced, stuff like that. And so because of that, you're going to get a few different strains. The good news for coronavirus is that it does not mutate as fast as the influenza virus does. And so if you look at the strains circulating around the world, there's, I think last I checked, there were maybe 5 strains that were circulating. There's not so many of them. And so what we are now seeing is that the mutation is not as fast or as rapid as we thought. Now you can have a mutation to where an organism becomes more lethal, or the mutation occurs and the organism can no longer invade your body and it becomes, like a sickness that doesn't affect anybody or nobody gets sick from it. Okay.
But I'm concerned with the not being detected by the test.
Yes. Okay. So let me explain.
Go ahead.
Okay, so now what we do when we're creating a diagnostic test kit for, say, coronavirus of COVID-19, let me put it that way, is we go back to that sequence that I was telling you about, and we look for what we call conserved regions. So a conserved region in a sequence means that that region is conserved and preserved across many generations. So what's going to happen is it doesn't change much. There are some regions that are variable, meaning they will change or they differ. So you look for conserved regions that are specific to COVID-19, that differentiated from other organisms, because you don't want your kid to be picking up other organisms as well. Now, when you're looking for this, you're not just looking for one conserved region. You're probably going to look for 2 to 3 conserved regions, especially when it pertains to kits for public health, because you want to make sure as best as possible you have as few false positives as you possibly can get. Right? And so once we create that kit, we are targeting conserved regions. So and this is the reason why we need to keep sequencing the strains that are coming up every so often. You'll see they'll go in, they'll sequence, because they're trying to make sure, okay, it's the same conserved regions are still in existence. Now, when it comes to the failure of a test kit or a test didn't detect your organism, several things can happen. One, the time that you collect your sample matters. So if you're collecting your sample at a time when there's very, very low viral counts, because a test is only as good as its detection levels, and no detection level is 100% foolproof. So sometimes it might be that you need 10 viral particles for it to be able to start detecting what you want to detect, the COVID-19. So if you take samples too early, then you may have an issue. You will not see a positive result. If you don't take the sample correctly, because sample collection is very, very important. So sometimes you really have to make sure, not sometimes, you have to make sure you're training the technicians or the people that are collecting samples. How are they collecting them and where are they collecting them from? Okay, so we know they're now collecting the nasal as well as throat samples. I heard this from one of my sisters who had to go get a test. She's in healthcare. And so they did a throat swab as well as a nasal swab. So it depends. Now, in some places I've heard they're only doing nasal swabs. I was just talking to somebody in Alabama. Their company said everybody had to take the test. It was a nasal swab that was done. So now it depends on how the samples are being collected. Then on top of that, now once we collect the sample, we run the test, right? We do have occasionally, remember those conserved regions are what we are targeting. So for the most part, we should be able to see positives. If we don't, the other reason could be a simple one. You could be suffering from the flu itself, or something else, because remember, a lot of the symptoms that we are seeing are similar to symptoms that for other diseases. Now, I'm not saying when you see these symptoms, just sit down and say, oh, well, she said it could be the flu too, so I'm not going for testing. Go for that test, because we need to know who's positive and who isn't, because testing is really important in helping us to combat or to control virus spread. And so there's a lot of things that are going on. I would rather have a false positive test than a false negative test, obviously, because false negative says I'm fine, and then you go out there and you end up infecting other people because you thought you were fine. Whereas a false positive, we go into high gear, we think you're positive, you have to quarantine, you have to go through all these measures, right? And so there's a lot that goes on when it comes to testing. And then there's also just the aspect of how good is the test, which regions are they targeting? How effective is the test? I used to make test kits for salmonella, and I discovered something. Not every single, because we used to use, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it, what it's called. Not the primers, but some of the solutions that are made to be able to run these tests. So not every company would tell you, oh, our solution is the best. We can detect anything and all of that stuff. And then I realized that all things are not made equal. Some things are better than others, and some work best with viruses, others work best with bacteria. But I know the scientists are working really hard out there to use the best possible solutions and primers and all of that stuff in their kits. So there's a lot of questions to this. I won't attribute it to mutations is the reason, because I think that if mutations are occurring, then they will be scrambling to create new test kits to looking at if changes happen within the conserved regions that they are targeting. And that becomes a serious cause for concern, actually, if you're going to have changes occurring in the conserved regions. That's scary. That would be scary.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, because I've noticed, I've heard this just within this week where I've heard people say they're showing COVID-19 signs, but they're going to do the test and the test is coming back negative. Prayer is that obviously we pray that it's just that they have maybe the flu or is just symptoms of something else other than the COVID-19. But it's also interesting thing because, like you're saying, if the conserved regions are mutating, then like my question would be, how soon do scientists get to catch it that, oh, now we have a situation where our tests are coming back negative because the coronavirus is evading detection because it has mutated its conserved regions. Like in your experience or in your research area, how soon do scientists get to catch that the conserved regions have changed?
Okay, so when we look at public health is and they do a lot of molecular work, especially at the CDC type level. And so what they are doing is, as people are coming in with symptoms, they've probably demarcated certain times where what they're going to do is they're going to sequence the viruses. So I'm pretty sure they won't be sequencing every single virus that they get, because obviously with over 200,000 millions of cases going on, we cannot be sequencing all those. So you probably set time targets, and when you start realizing lots of people are coming in with COVID symptoms and later it does develop into COVID-19, because they're combining these methods with normal hospital measures. So if, for example, you're exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms, but yet the test is saying negative, so they run the X-ray and they look at your lungs, for instance, they see that, oh, definitely this could be COVID-19. That becomes something that I would want to sequence, because then why didn't my test kit catch this? And if we start seeing more of those people in the population, then we're going to sequence those and then check what is going on. And then if we see that the conserved regions we're looking for are not, they're still intact, there's no mutations there, then I have to start asking myself, what's wrong with my kit? So the diagnostic microbiology is not one way you're just going to sit down. I made one test kit, it works, and I'm going to sit down. Sometimes you have to go back and you have to take a look at what could have gone wrong, what could be going wrong, and so that does come into play.
Sure, I have learned so much today. I think my word of the day is the conserved regions. I feel like now I can tell everybody I'm a microbiologist now.
Yes, you can.
Okay, so now let's talk prevention. I like to talk about prevention is better than cure. Honestly, that's how I live my life. I like to be on the preventative side of things than to be on the cure side of things. So what tips can you give us for just making sure that we, as much as it lies in us, we can take preventative measures not to get this COVID-19?
All right, so that's a great question. I kind of knew that one was coming. So I'm going to go back a little bit to 1918. So we had the influenza attack of 1918, right? And so based on some of the things that were happening there, We saw what a pandemic could do, but here's the deal. Most of us were not alive in 1918. We hear stories of what happened. We see pictures of what happened. We see how they prevented. Somebody tells us about it, but it's not really ingrained in us. And so you find that a lot of us are struggling to look for ways of prevention. So now let's look at, you had smallpox, we had the plague and all sorts of other diseases coming along. What we did is we created vaccines, and very soon we don't see those anymore. Right now, we do not have a vaccine for COVID-19. So unfortunately, we cannot try to stop it that way. With COVID-19, we also do not have a cure. There's no drug that somebody can give you and say, okay, this is the cure. Your body helps itself to heal as all sorts of drugs are thrown at you. So now what then happens is with every organism, the first thing I think that becomes really important is, can we stop this virus from spreading from one person to the next? So one of the things is you sneeze, droplets come out, either they land on a surface or they travel through the air and somebody inhales them, or somebody touches a contaminated surface and then infects themselves, right? So things like that can happen. And so that's where we can now start putting in measures ourselves to prevent it. So we look at the characteristics of the virus. How does this virus spread from person to person? Okay, so in the case of coronavirus, we know that coughing, we know sneezing, we know droplets that are coming from our mouths and stuff like that, right? So we know something. So the first thing you want to do is quarantine.
Let me ask you, let me stop you there, doctor. So you mentioned sneezing and coughing and any other form that causes droplets to come out of our mouth or nose. Are those the only known forms that can transfer it? Like if I have it,
Mm-hmm.
and there are no droplets coming off of me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not touching you, but I'm sitting next to you and we are just simply breathing in and out. Can the air that I'm breathing out contain the coronavirus? Or
Absolutely.
is it only through droplets?
So the air that you're breathing out is going to have what you call aerosols. It will have tiny little droplets that are coming out. So you're releasing something. The air that comes out of you doesn't come out dry. It doesn't come out filtered and clean. It comes out with whatever it is that you have on your inside. So it's going to come, right? And so then what you want to do is, because this is now, sneezing is not necessarily a symptom of coronavirus, but assuming I had coronavirus, I was asymptomatic or symptomatic, and I sneeze, droplets are going to come out of my mouth, of my nose, and those droplets could be contaminated with the virus. So what are some of the things that we can do? Quarantine really is the number one thing. So if you know for a fact that you have symptoms, you need to quarantine yourself. Or if you've been exposed to somebody who had symptoms, you're going to need to quarantine yourself. What does quarantine mean? You're going to place yourself in seclusion. You're going to make sure you're not coming into contact with otherwise healthy people, because you want to make sure that you are not passing the virus on to them. Right? Another thing that we are doing is, obviously, right now you have two situations going on. You have symptomatic people and you have asymptomatic people. An asymptomatic person is not showing symptoms. They're not showing you that they have or could be carrying the coronavirus. We don't know that. So when I go out into the streets and I see people, any one of them could be contaminated. In fact, I myself could be contaminated. So then we institute some extra public health guidelines to help us. And so one of the things that we do, hygiene becomes really, really important. A lot of times when we are coughing, we touch our faces, we touch our mouths, we touch our noses. All of that happens. So this is why we're told wash your hands regularly, wash it for 20 minutes with soap, because that soap is going to kill the coronavirus and get it off your hands, right? The other thing that we are told to do, aside from hygiene, for example, let me actually stay on hygiene for a little bit. The surfaces, you need to make sure you sanitize, clean your surface first, make sure it's clean, and then you sanitize it with your various alcoholic-based detergents and sanitizers. You clean up, and that also helps. Then the third thing we're being asked to do is we're being asked to social distance. Right? So we've been given a parameter 6 feet. Stay 6 feet apart from each other. Why? Because under normal breathing conditions, if I breathe, I cough, I sneeze, and I could be carrying corona, it probably is going to carry for less than 6 feet. And so what they're saying is if you're staying 6 feet apart, you are actually reducing the chances of you carrying corona. Now, there were some scientists and papers that were released very recently that actually show that COVID-19 is airborne. That means it can stay in the atmosphere for a while, and when it does that, somebody can inhale that. And this is where masks now also come in. So if I'm wearing a mask, I cough, I sneeze, I'm coughing into the mask, and those, especially large particles, they're not released into the air. If I cough or I sneeze and large particles come out, those particles can break up into smaller droplets and stay in the air longer, and that's something we don't want to happen. If the large particle doesn't break up, it would drop and it will land on a surface. Somebody else who's not sick can come and touch that surface. Before long, they're touching their mouth, they're touching their nose, they're touching their eyes. You know, we rub our eyes a lot. I didn't realize how difficult it was to follow these guidelines until they were put in place. I found myself rubbing my eyes. You know, they were itchy or dry, especially during allergy season. And that's one of the things you should not do. And so now when I'm wearing a mask, you're wearing a mask, what are we doing? We are really decreasing the chances of passing coronavirus on to one another. So masks are not 100% foolproof, and that's something that we have to know, but they will reduce the probability or the chances of you transmitting coronavirus to somebody, even if you're asymptomatic. They will also reduce the chances of you, somebody else transmitting coronavirus to you. And so this is where it also becomes important how you are removing your mask. You have to remove it carefully. Make sure you wash it. You know, I personally, if I wear a mask today and I come back from the store, it goes into the washer, you know, and then I make sure I do that. I have to go wash my hands thoroughly because I want to make sure that in case the outside got contaminated for whatever reason, I'm not going to be touching my face, my nose, and so on and so forth.
So how long can a virus last on the mask?
So all of this depends, and there's quite a number of papers out there. People have been doing quite a bit of research in terms of how long the virus can last on different types of surfaces. So there's no one answer to that, unfortunately. Depending on the surface, you know, maybe it's cloth, a different type of cloth, maybe it's silk cloth you use. So there's different answers for that, and unfortunately, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I did post, I think, a paper one day on my page that was showing the different time frames that a virus will last on specific surfaces.
Interesting. And
viable, rather.
You pointed out something that really resonated a little bit and actually made me realize that I've been practicing bad habits with the mask. So when I go out to walk, I put my mask on. If somebody is approaching me, like when I think I'm the only one on the trail, I put my mask down just because I kind of like, it gets hot, especially in Houston, it's like super hot. And then when I see somebody approaching, I put it back on. And then after they pass, I normally calculate like maybe 10, 15 feet after they pass, then I take it back down. But the way you described those particles and them lingering in the air even after that person passed makes me question whether I'm practicing good habits with my mask wearing when I'm walking.
All right. So technically, you should have your mask on at all times, but I get that it's hard. It gets hot and all of that stuff, and so most of us really can't do that, right? And so, and I don't want to be an alarmist. So most of the times, if we look at the data so far and the research, and this could change, the situation is fluid. If you are outside in a big environment, really the chances of you inhaling or getting corona that way are very low. Because remember, there's lots of air, lots of space, the wind is blowing. It's honestly, the chances are not that high. Otherwise, we would all be having corona right now if it was that, you know.
Yay. Okay.
So
That makes sense. I'm
yeah.
glad you are not an alarmist, because if it was me, I would have said, Carol, you better make sure you never take off your mask.
No, because I know it's not possible, you know. And for example, you know, we were told that if we have in-person classes, because I teach, so they said if you have a class of less than 50,
Oh, you do?
go outside.
You teach?
They said if you have a class of less than 50, you can hold an in-person class, but that in-person class, if it's not a lab and all, you're going to actually have it outside. So they're going to set up tents, and they're going to put in the social distancing rules, 6 feet. They'll bring out all the microphones and everything that you need. I don't know how many people would take them up on that offer, but the offer is there in case somebody does want to have an in-person class. But that's one of the reasons they feel that is okay for now to do, I guess, until we find out that's not good to do. But you're outside. So when you're outside, you're no longer in an enclosed environment. When you're in a building, remember the air is circulating, and that's the same air that we're going to be breathing in and out and all of that stuff. So you're avoiding that. You're now making sure there's a much larger surface area for the virus to spread out. And so you may not necessarily I think that really drastically reduces the chances of transmitting virus from one person to another. So when you're outside, I think feel safe. I'm not saying go out there without your mask and be all,
Yay!
No, especially if you are out and there are lots of people, definitely your mask should stay on. I mean, I go running and there's maybe I see 1 or 2 people at the most. At the time that I go, I don't wear my mask during that time. Forgive me, y'all, but I don't. But that's because there's not a lot of people, so I don't feel that there's much. The risks are drastically reduced, and so I feel okay with that.
No, I understand, and I forgive you. Now, Doc, let's talk about. Let's get a little bit personal.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that really, where you are, you've been in California for how long? 3 years now?
Oh no, it's 4. I got here end of December 2015, and
it's 4. Okay, but I know that most of your friends, if not all of your friends down there, well, I mean, you don't have any friends. I'm the only friend, but anyway, the ones that think they're your friends down there, I hope they're not watching.
I'll just send them your way if they come to ask you. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Ask her.
I know that most of them are from church.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really have any friends down there apart from church? How are you handling the fact that you are not able to go to church? And I know you nearly killed me at the beginning of this whole thing when I was telling you to stop going to church, and I didn't back down. But how are you handling that?
All right. Yes, I almost killed you, and I'm still going to church. All right. So from a spiritual perspective, from a God perspective, this is a complex issue. I don't think it's an issue that's easy to understand or easy to accept. The Bible says we walk by faith and not by sight. But yet, God has given us a mind, a will and emotions. And so I look at it as we are the complete package, in terms of all of God's creation. We can make decisions based on information that we have, and at the same time, we can also walk by faith. So, when I first heard that churches were closing down, I'll be honest, I don't believe that the doors of the church should be shut. That's my personal opinion. Scientists aside, I believe that the church doors must always be open. But I also understand the church is not necessarily the building. The church is the people. So as long as we are still open to ministering to people, we are still open to touching people's lives, we are still open to helping the sick, the orphans, the way the Bible has asked us to, I think we're still doing our job as the church. So now when it comes to looking at what's going on in our personal lives, so this is, I think I see is a lot of people, because church has shut down, so to speak. We have a church online and church through the internet. Some of them are not even coming onto the broadcast to watch, okay? And then when you call them, because sometimes we get up as Christians, let's check on one another. Let's see how Sister Shandarella is doing and how brother this person is doing. Let's check them out. And then when you are talking to them, they are talking to you about how down they are and how things are not going so well. When you ask them, are you tuning into the broadcast? They're not. What's your spiritual life like? So I think we have to develop a personal spiritual relationship with God. You have to have your own prayer time. You can't pray because Pastor XYZ is praying. That's the only time you pray. You can't read your Bible on Sunday morning and on Wednesday evening only. That doesn't work. It's like saying, okay, I have a condition and the doctor has given me antibiotics for it, but I'm only going to take the antibiotics every time when I see the doctor, right? No, you have to take antibiotics every single day on schedule, 3 times a day. When you're asked to do that, we are visualizing that, we can see it. We take those antibiotics. I wake up in the morning, take it, afternoon, take it, evening, take it, until the whole course is done. So that we have to apply that same principle towards our spiritual lives. I must wake up in the morning and spend time with God. I can do that as well in the afternoon. Smith Wigglesworth, old preacher from a long time ago, he said he lived a fasted life. And what he did was every top of the hour, he spends 5 minutes, not even a 30-minute or an hour, just 5 minutes. He stops, prays, maybe reads the scripture. Now, I know we may not have 5 minutes every hour or may not remember, but it's the consistency and the frequency with which you are spending time with God. I think that helps build you up, and then you are able to build somebody else up. So it doesn't become a case of, well, the church is not open, so because church is not open, I can't get to do what. I've seen lots of churches right now. They are having drive-throughs where they are preparing food and all of this, and the same activities they were doing for the less privileged in their communities, they're still doing those. You drive through with your car, whatever, they put the food in the car for you, you drive off. So they're still feeding the hungry. They're still looking after the lost. I get we're not doing it probably the way we could or the way we should, but I also
the traditional way.
Yes, but I also think this is an eye-opener for the church, because we did things a certain way, and that certain way may not have necessarily been working completely. So this is time for us to retool. It's time for us to sit at the table and say what worked, what didn't, what is still working. How can I still be an effective Christian in this generation? Then if you look at me, I'm a scientist, so I'm not going to sit down and be foolish. I know viruses exist. It's not 5G. I know that I had to help you with that one. A virus is a microorganism. It gets alive as soon as it enters your body. So not 5G. It is an organism. And so, so, when we start to take a look at the information that we have, like, for example, I know based on the data that is available that the cases of coronavirus are shooting up in California. Right? So is it wise for me to say, everybody, we must be gathering, or 200 or 300 of us inside this room? Yet I know that if we gather, this could be a super spreader event and other people could get sick from this. And then we also have to understand we have a responsibility to one another, and we have a responsibility to the susceptible portion of our population, whether they be infants, children, the elderly, and we have lots of people that have gone through cancer, chemotherapy, they have had transplants and all of that stuff. What can we do as a church to look after them? And so this is where you now have to start thinking, okay, we can't do church as normal for now until we have a solution, vaccine, or we implement measures. I know people call them draconian measures, but if we had all sat in our homes and if we had all quarantined and did the shelter in the way we were supposed to, right now, I don't think we would be going through these sky-high numbers that we're seeing, at least here in the United States. But when we look at how we closed down and opened too early. In fact, we closed down and there were some people that never closed down, right? I know I went to certain shopping centers and I would see a nail salon open, yet nail salons were supposed to be closed. So there was a lot of disobedient behavior. So coming from a scientist, yes, I'm a Christian. I believe totally in God, and I know that God is real and that God can heal, God can deliver, and He is doing that. But we also have to be wise. It says the children of the world are wise. We, the children of light, need to also be wise. You need to be as wise as a serpent, but as gentle as a dove. So what information do you know that can help you not contract COVID? Those are
awesome. I love it. And I love it even more because, I love all the areas that you touched, that we are the church. The notion that the world has that the church is closed is a very wrong notion. The building, the place where the saints congregate to worship together, to show each other love, to give each other emotional support, that place is closed right now. But the church is with us, is wherever a believer is, there is the church. So we shouldn't ever feel like this thing has made us to shut down. And another area also that you touched is the area of wisdom. Wisdom is not fear. Fear is lack of faith. Wisdom is not lack of faith. Wisdom is applying knowledge, knowing that the very God that in the beginning knew that man would fall, but did not change his mind with creating man, is the very same God who knew that the viruses will exist and knew what measures humanity will have to take to defeat viruses. But that same God did not stop the existence of viruses. That same God is the same God that says He lets it rain on the righteous and on the evil. Mm-hmm. If it rains on the righteous and it rains on the evil, that's His command of nature. And His command of viruses is also the same. But faith tells us that that same God can, if my body catches the virus, His mercy, His healing hand, because I didn't go out there and test Him, mm-hmm. He will have mercy on me and touch my body and heal me. I keep telling James, I keep saying, I feel like I have at some point had the coronavirus because I had a dry cough for about 2 weeks, right at the beginning of this thing. Me and Tezzy had the dry cough. But I believe that the hand of God, His healing power, because He knew that we are not going out there and testing Him. We are not going out there and trying to prove that what He created and what He has in existence, that my wisdom is above His creation. In fact, we humbled ourselves and said, God, you are the one who has control of this. You are the one who has enabled the scientists to be able to have wisdom to tell us what we need to do. We are not going to test you, but in the event that we do catch this thing, we know that you are the almost powerful God and the virus is not more powerful than you are. And we can leave, we can go outside, we can go to the grocery store, we can do the necessary things, we can take the precaution, but we do know that we can catch it unaware. But God is all powerful to take care of that. So, Dr. Lungu, we really do appreciate you being with us today. And
before we close, I know that there's not much time. I've not had chance to look at some of the questions in the text, and I just saw a few that came in.
Oh, I've been trying to scroll through to see the questions. Oh, and it's not what? Why is Facebook doing this?
So I did see a question from Maria about vaccines. And Dr. Fauci and a number of other people, I think, have said a lot about vaccines.
Oh, 27 questions. Why was Facebook? Oh my goodness.
Yes, I just got lots of beeps coming in. I realized there were messages. So I just want to touch a little on
we are going to keep you in longer then. Go ahead.
All right. So when we take a look at vaccine production takes a while. Right? There's so many things that you have to do. You're looking at making sure the vaccine is safe. You're making sure the vaccine is working. What are your targets for that vaccine? You have to choose those very carefully, and you have to make sure that once somebody takes the vaccine, the person's not going to start getting sick from your vaccine. So according to the information I had around March, April of this year, they were saying maybe a year and a half. But yesterday, Dr. Fauci was being interviewed by, I think it was Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook. And he mentioned that there's actually some trials. There's, I think currently, I believe he said in the United States, 30,000 people are in some trial. So there's vaccines out there. I'm a skeptic when it comes to all these quickly made vaccines. And I'm totally against vaccines that, especially if we're going to skip and move to third world countries or to developing nations or to use minorities and the poor as the people that we are using to test these vaccines out. I'm completely against that. And I think that what we need to do is, I would like to see the data before you give me this vaccine. You know, and if you remember, every single era, whether it was influenza in 1918, smallpox, you name it, when somebody came out with vaccine, there was always a little bit of people uncertain, people don't believe it, you know, people thinking you're trying to kill them. There's all sorts of things people think. But I do believe that a vaccine can be made safely. It takes time. And I think sometimes we move a little bit too fast, because there were a couple of vaccines that they threw out there. I think it was in April, May, only to find they had some serious side effects that were landing people in hospital, young people who are supposed to be the healthy type. So I think that we're a ways off. According to his timetable, about a year maybe now is left. He said about a year to a year and 6 months. That's when he thinks a viable vaccine is going to be available for the whole world. Now, you also have to remember, after the testing, they have to be able to produce the vaccine in large quantities and make sure that it's actually being produced properly. Because you don't want to produce a vaccine and then it doesn't work after producing it in large quantities. So there's so much work that needs to be done. And I think vaccine, we could take days talking about this topic. So
yeah. Another question that came in, Benita says, so the virus cannot travel through an AC system, vents such as in school, travel from room to room.
Okay, all right, that's a great question, and I think it's a good question in case in that people are concerned, especially that we're trying to send our children back to school. So if you look at most of your air systems and vents, they have filters there. Okay, so probably I think the school will have to make sure they're installing filters in there that will keep the virus from, you know, traveling from room to room and stuff like that, if in the event that that would happen. But I think a lot of different measures are being put in place in some states. I can't talk about other states. I can only talk about California. So they're going into the schools to try and retrofit or to make sure that the conditions are okay for opening. But even then, we're not even opening, because when the numbers are so high, it's no longer a matter of traveling from room to room. You're more concerned about what's going on in the same room that you are in with other people. So we're not so much worried about the virus traveling from one room to the next. We're more concerned about the air that is circulating within the room that all the children are going to be in, for instance, or the people are going to be in, for instance. So I think the bigger concern is what's happening in a specific room.
Thank you, Doctor. There's another question Maria is asking. We have to be very clear about this one. She is asking for a friend.
Okay.
What about people who might want to go to the beach?
All right. People who live in Florida, people who live in California, and all of that stuff. Yes, we do want to go to the beach. Here's the deal. A lot of times when people go to the beach, what you're noticing is there are thousands of people at the beach. So for example, we closed the beaches, and then as soon as the beaches were opened, a lot of people ran to the beaches. I noticed something about all of those people at the beaches. No social distancing, no masks. They were just behaving like life is normal. And I think under such conditions, just stay home. If you're going to go to the beach and it's crowded like that, you are better off staying at home, because guaranteed you probably might you're increasing the chances, rather, I should say, of you contracting COVID. If it's not crowded and there's like, I go running outside, like I told you, there's 1, 2, 3, maybe people I see. And even then there's so much room. I move to the other side of the road. They move to the other side of the road, such things. So you could potentially go to the beach, but you have to make sure that you're adhering to public health guidelines.
Awesome. And the other comments were just really affirmation comments. And Janelle has talked about that. She put in there that there's a vaccine trial in South Africa that's being protested. And, yesterday, during my lunch hour, which I didn't even finish that because it went on for more than an hour and I had to get back to work, there was a talk that was done by the ministers of health from Rwanda, Botswana, and South Africa. And I had asked the Minister of Health from South Africa to talk about why they are digging graves. They showed on TV that they're digging 1 million graves, and like that. I mean, like, you painting a beautiful picture, because he talked real well about what South Africa is doing and how they are combating it and everything. But we've seen on TV you are digging 1 million graves. That sounds like you are reading a page out of the Trump administration. We are going to leave.
We're going there, right?
But anyway,
so I think when I look at such instances, I look at it as, I don't think any government is completely transparent. We hope that they are. I read that there were tenders that were given where they're just digging stuff ahead of time. The microbiologist in me thought, I'm betting they've seen the numbers. They know exactly what's going on. And so they're preparing for...
That's what the analyst in me said too.
Yes. In the event that something is happening, they are prepping for that. And, there could be all sorts of reasons that they're doing this. And unfortunately, we probably will never know. But you're right, it doesn't look good for them to be digging 1 million graves. 1 million graves, and then say that, at least they're not pretending they have the situation under control, because, in some places the narrative is that we have the situation under control, and that really is not the case, because we're seeing hospitals fill up with sick people, we're seeing, ICUs are filling to capacity and all of that stuff. So there has to be at the back of your mind, take everything with a grain of salt. So when somebody says the situation is under control and yet 1 million graves are being dug, I'm going to stay in my house unless I have to get outside.
And Dr. Danielle is asking, she says she's had 6 customers asking for MMR vaccine. Do you know what that is all about?
So the MMR vaccine is measles, mumps, and rubella. And so again, those are viral disease. Those are viruses that cause, it's a virus that causes measles, different virus causes mumps, different virus causes rubella, okay? And so what people are now doing is when they hear a story, well, we think that this vaccine can work. And some people are under the notion that as long as it's a vaccine working against one virus, maybe by chance it could work against COVID-19. I heard that for I can't remember what vaccine that was, that people were touting. If we take this vaccine, it was actually the influenza vaccine. People were talking about how, well, if you took the influenza vaccine, some said it might be the reason you're sick, but others said that could help mitigate COVID symptoms. And I said, no, the influenza vaccine is targeting the influenza virus. And so I think they're under the misconception that the measles, mumps, rubella, MMR is going to work against the COVID-19. And I doubt very much it's going to work, because remember, there's target sequences. If it's a vaccine, that's molecular based. If it's antibody based, there's again targets that we're looking at. We don't just randomly say, okay, we're just going to take this and throw stuff together. There's a thought pattern to this. What is the target? What is it that we're targeting? Maybe we are targeting how it invades. How can we stop it from invading the cells? How can we stop it maybe from being airborne? So these are some of the things these are some of the questions that are being asked. You're mute, so I can't hear you.
There I go again. I think we covered all the questions that were asked, and I think you did very good, Doc. And this is the last time I'm calling you Doctor. You get it?
Thank you very much. Can you call me Doctor one more time?
Until you are back on air, you are now Bwalya. So till we talk again, thank you so much for coming in and sharing all this information. And our word of the day, are you all listening to me? Our word of the day today is conserved regions. That's our virus day word of the day. We learned so much. I mean, I feel like your students are so blessed to have you as their teacher. The way you shared information, you made it so easy to digest, so easy to understand it. You even made it interesting. Like, I think somebody somewhere must have thought I should go and study microbiology.
Woo, I hope so.
You made it so super amazing. And again, we thank you for coming in and sharing all that information, and for allowing God to use you to touch a soul or two, or to help somebody do the right things. I know you helped me with the mask when I'm outside running. I will still take it off, but I will pay more attention between the distance of me and the other walker or the other runner. So thank you so much, and have a blessed evening.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody that came online to listen to me ramble on about microbiology. Thanks, and thanks again. Bye.
And to my friends online, we will talk again on Friday. Again, if you have any topic that is of interest to you and you would like to hear it, please let me know. I am planning to do a rerun of some of our previous talks, because we had not found the awesome tool that we found now that is working so well. So stay tuned on who will be on our show on Friday. And again, let those topics come, and stay blessed, stay cool, stay, my friends. and don't let nobody steal you, because my Facebook page is famous of people that just come in and just steal our show. Say hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Tell them, what does God say about Naphtali? Tell them.
No.
Oh, Naphtali.
He's shy today.
No.
Yes, you do.
I'm very critical.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.